So why did our senses develop? As Matt said, if we go right back to our evolutionary history, billions of years ago, we can think about those really early microorganisms. And what did they need to do to survive and pass on their genes to their next offspring, as it were? So they needed to first figure out how to survive. Well, billions of years ago, suddenly there were predators, and the original organisms were kind of rooted to the spot, just swaying, just waiting for anything to come and gobble them up. So what they needed to do is first to be able to sense when something dangerous was coming, and they needed to be able to move away from it when it crept up to find them. And on top of that, they also needed to survive, so they needed to find things that were good to eat. They needed to find nutrition so that they could grow. And they needed to find a way to reproduce. And that's really where that connection piece comes in, really at that really early point, is that they also had to figure out who is a mate and the ways to mate, so their offspring could carry on the gene pool. So if we go back to that early period, some of the very early senses that developed were those chemicals receptors, that sense of understanding when something was good to eat or was nutritious, or if we did eat it and it might be toxic and kill us. Okay, so if we think of those chemical receptors and where they've developed today, we're thinking about our sense of smell and our sense of taste. And out here in the forest, we're in such a scentscape that we might not have in our SI gyms. So this scentscape is full of all the chemicals that the trees are letting out. We can call those phanticides or killer cells. And what we know is that they're really good for our physiology. That actually, as we breathe in the chemicals that the trees are talking to each other, they're providing ourselves with regulating nutritious chemicals that help us sleep better, eat better, kill cancer, and all sorts of things. It's just recently rained, and in this forest I've got that smell of that wet earth. So if I bend down and I take a bit of leaf, I can really smell those earthy smells. We call that geosm. And why is that so important to our species? Well, if you imagine when we were thirsty, the smell of geosm would tell us where water is. And where water is, there is nutrition and there's food. So that's why we love that smell, so much so that we can recognize just 7 drops in a pool of water. So being outside in nature really allows us to have this really regulating environment where these chemicals are all around us and we're breathing them in a way that we might not be able to do in a clinical space. But on top of that, if you think about our chemical senses, we also use our chemical senses for connection. It's really important that we find a mate. At least some of our species have offspring so that our genes can continue. And we use pheromones to figure out what is safe and what's dangerous in other people. We can actually smell fear in another person. We can smell the scent of our mother when we're a newborn baby, and the mother can recognize her own baby by her scent of smell. So we use these chemical senses still very much in our day-to-day lives and our ability to participate and to connect with other people. So it's really important that when we're thinking about our senses and how they've evolved, we include a little bit more about that chemical sense in our practice.